See the blood on the off side of the hole? He was hit dead center, I would say, and just fell into the hole. Chapter 5. The flat seemed to be literally covered with gophers as Dad stopped the Model T Ford in the middle of it. He took the .22, loaded it, and then seeing a gopher standing on his hind legs a short distance away, he drew aim, paused only a second, and when the gun cracked, the gopher flopped to the ground and lay still. I watched with fascination as Dad pumped shell after shell into the barrel. Every time he fired, a gopher dropped dead. When the gun was finally empty, he handed it to me, saying, "That's the way it's done, Phil. Now you load the gun while I watch you. This time it will be your turn to see how many you can get with a magazine of shells. These are shorts, so it holds 15. When you become a good shot, you will be able to get at least a dozen with each magazine full. For now, however, you will be doing well if you get 1 or 2. It takes practice, just like anything else you will attempt to do. I have a feeling, though, that it will be no chore to get you to practice." When I had the gun loaded, Dad nodded at me to go ahead. Not over 30 feet away, a gopher flicked his tail saucily as he lay across his mound ready to dive into his hole. With my heart beating wildly, I lifted the gun and had difficulty steadying it to get a bead on the gopher. Finally, I thought I might be somewhere near, so I pulled the trigger. The dirt kicked up about a foot over the target and to the right. With a final squeak of indignation, the gopher plunged out of sight. I looked at Dad and then listened to what he said. "You were in a little too much of a hurry, I think. Never pull the trigger unless you are reasonably sure your sights are dead on your target. It is better to wait than to waste ammunition and scare game away doing it. Now, try again a little slower this time. You're doing just fine." I pumped in another shell and stood looking for a target. Then I saw the gopher I had shot at before sticking his head up out of the hole. I lifted the gun. When it continued to waver, I lowered it and asked Dad, "Can I take a rest over the car and see if I can hit him?" Dad shook his head. "No, I don't want you to learn to shoot by taking a rest all the time. It may seem hard for you now, but you must learn to hit the mark freehand and standing. When you learn that way, you will be a good shot. You can always use a rest later, but you must learn freehand. You may not always find a rest when you need to place a good, quick shot, and you will be worse off than ever. Just keep right on freehand." Though I was very young then, I listened and remembered everything he told me that first day. Some of it still comes back to me when I hunt. Little did I realize just how well his good advice and patience was to stay with me for the rest of my life. Many do not realize how much a child of 5 or 6 years can absorb. This is the inquisitive age, and his entire being is geared to learn. The lessons I learned that day were right. I knew I had a lethal weapon in my hands, and I respected it, for I did not yet know exactly what it could do. I set my jaw in determination to do better. My greatest fear was that I might fail, and if so, my mother would insist that I was too young to shoot the rifle and hunt, and I would have to wait another year. To be able to do this seemed the most important thing in the world to me right then. Holding the gun, I tried to steady it on the gopher who seemed to be posing for me. The harder I tried, the more shaky I became. When I began to tighten my hold, I found that by putting pressure on the left arm, I could bring the stock tighter to my shoulder, and the barrel began to steady. Finally, I got the front sight in the notch of the rear sight, and the little bead was right on the gopher. Fearing it would waver off again, I jerked the trigger, and the bullet kicked up dirt about 4 inches to the right of the accommodating gopher, who ducked out of sight once more, perhaps with dirt in his beady little eyes. Lowering the gun once more, I looked at Dad, who smiled and said, "Son, you're doing just fine. This time I think you were right on target, but you jerked the trigger too hard and pulled off. Again, you were too excited and in too much of a hurry. The next time you get your sights on the target, just squeeze that trigger. Half the battle in becoming a good shot is knowing the trigger pull of your gun and judging how hard you have to pull to release it. Now, try again. It looks like your gopher has lost interest in you, so we'll find another one." We started walking west, with me close behind Dad. We had only gone a few paces when he stopped and pointed. "What about that one? He is right out in the open." I was about to raise the gun when I stopped and shook my head. "No, I can't shoot at him because I'd be shooting right towards the buildings." "Good boy," chuckled Dad. "I just wanted to make sure you remembered that." We walked a little farther, and then we saw a gopher not 10 foot to our right, half his body exposed as he snuggled over his hole, watching us alertly. This time I got the sights lined up a little quicker, and then I began to squeeze the trigger. I felt the slack take up, and then my sights wavered off, but I held the pull on the trigger until I brought the sights back into line again. I was almost surprised when the rifle cracked. I did not see where the bullet hit, but my gopher was gone. I was disappointed. I felt sure I had a bead on him. Dad said, "By golly, I believe you hit him. Let's go see." I followed along, my gun over my shoulder. When we got to the hole, Dad exclaimed, "Yep, that's your first gopher. See the blood on the offside of the hole? He was hit dead center, I'd say, and just fell into the hole. We will call that a kill. Now you are a hunter, for you've killed your first game." "Gee," I breathed as I looked with pride. "From now on, all you will need is a lot of practice if you can remember all I have told you this afternoon. Well, come on, let's get some more of these varmints. The more we kill, the more garden we'll have this fall, to say nothing of the grain." As the afternoon wore on, I became more and more used to the knack of holding on target while I took up the slack in the trigger. By evening I had killed 11 gophers. I remember the number because it became a magic number for many days after. It was something very special to me. We had agreed that we would take a magazine of shells each, but Dad let me do most of the shooting. The only time he shot was when a gopher would be a long way off or when only his head was showing. Of course, at that, he got more than I did, but I was happy beyond words. When we drove into the yard, I asked, "Can I go hunting again tomorrow?" "I'm afraid not, son. I have to be gone for a few days now, and I don't think you are quite ready yet to hunt alone. Even if I would permit it, I'm afraid your mother would not." "Ah, gee," I said, deeply disappointed. "Now that I can shoot, I could kill off those gophers and maybe save the garden." Dad was silent for a time as he drove on in and shut the motor off. Then he said, "Yes, it would be fine if you could thin them out anyway. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll get Wayne to go with you for a few days and see how you make out. You will have to promise, though, not to argue with him and to do exactly what he tells you. If you can't mind him, then you will have to stop hunting until I can go with you." "Oh, I'll do everything he tells me. Gee, that will be great." "But suppose he won't go?" "He'll go all right. I'll tell him tonight, so we'll have it all settled before I leave." That night at the supper table, Dad told Mother and Wayne how I had shot 11 gophers, and I was very proud and pleased. Then he told Wayne that he would like to have him go with me the next day and teach me all he could. Wayne had been well instructed in hunting. I was surprised when Wayne readily agreed to go. The last thing I thought of before going to sleep that night was what a great day was in store for me. A dream come true. It is remarkable how a child's mind can grasp and hold anticipation of something like that, and it seems like time stands still while he is waiting to get started. I found myself wishing it was already morning and breakfast over so we could get started. I had been a little worried about Wayne's not liking his assignment and that he might begin teasing me as he was in the habit of doing when he wanted to get rid of me. Strangely enough, though, he seemed to be quite interested in training me. I knew hunting did not interest him greatly, and I learned later that Dad had told him the gophers must go. If I could not hunt them, then Wayne would have to do it. I suppose this could have been one of the reasons he was so eager to instruct me, so that I could eventually hunt by myself. Whatever his motives, he taught me much about hunting in the next few days. The following morning we left the ranch to walk out to where the gophers were thick. Wayne let me carry the rifle after making sure I carried it properly. We had walked only a short distance when we came to a fence which we must crawl through. Wayne went through first by holding down the middle wire, which he straddled, ducking below the top wire. I started to do the same, holding the gun in my right hand, when Wayne stopped me by saying, "Don't ever try to go through a fence with your gun in your hand. Here, let me show you." He came back through, took the rifle and checked it, making sure there was no shell in the barrel. He then put it through between the wires, barrel first, and leaned it against a post. Crawling through, he picked up the gun once more, careful where he kept the muzzle pointed. "There," he said, handing me the gun. "Now you try it. That is the right way to go through a fence while hunting. From now on, remember that, or you'll lose your gun for sure." I did most of the shooting that morning. As the hours wore on, I began to hit what I shot at more often than I missed in the afternoon. In the afternoon, I got 25 gophers with a box of 50 shells. Wayne remarked that I had done as well as he could have, but I was a little doubtful, for I had seen him make some pretty good shots. When we came in that evening, he showed me how to take the gun apart and clean it, instructing me to always run a clean dry rag through the barrel at the last, because any oil left in the barrel from an oily rag could collect dirt and dust by the time I might want to use the gun again. All of these things were fascinating to me, and once shown I never forgot them. I practiced them to the letter whenever handed the gun. For a while Wayne went with me faithfully, but I soon saw that he was bored. Then he began to let me stroll off by myself, making me promise not to tell Mother that I had hunted alone. At first I was a little nervous and doubly careful to remember all the safety rules. I knew that if I ever did forget, my hunting alone would surely come to an end. In a couple of weeks the hunting slowed down. Wayne was tired of it, and I could see why. It must have been quite boring to one who didn't care much for it in the first place. I had thinned out the gopher population somewhat, but there were still plenty of the little rodents left. I would tease Wayne and beg him to take me out at every opportunity, but he finally got so he simply refused. Then, when I would pester him too much, he would resort to teasing me until I'd get angry and leave him alone, which was what he wanted in the first place. On several occasions Dad took me out and sat in the car while I hunted nearby. He was quite impressed with my marksmanship. When he told me that, I was as proud as I had ever been of anything in my life. One day, while he was watching me, I shot a gopher not too far from the car. I hit the animal through the back part of his body. Seeing that he was mortally wounded, I turned and shot another a few feet away. In the meantime, the wounded gopher dragged himself to his hole and had gone down it. Dad came out of the car and said, "Now why did you let that wounded one get away?" "Well," I said, "he was hit hard anyway and will surely die." "That is not the point," said Dad sternly. "How would you like to lay and suffer with a bullet through your bowels? I told you before about always killing your game. You are not out here to torture things, but to rid us of a nuisance. No matter what you are shooting, or no matter how long it takes, I want you to always finish off any animal you have hit, if it is possible for you to do so. You had lots of time to finish off that gopher, but you were greedy and wanted to get another. Don't ever let me catch you doing that again. When a hunter loses compassion for suffering animals, he no longer has the right to be called a hunter. He should not even be allowed to hunt. There is enough suffering in this world, as you will learn some day, without you causing undue suffering to any living thing. Now, I want you to tell me the truth. Do you really like to kill things?" The question was crystal clear to me, even at that early age. I thought about it for a moment, and then I tried to give a truthful answer. "No," I said softly. I often look at these poor little gophers after I have shot them, and they are really cute. I guess they don't know they're bothering us either. Sometimes I'm sorry I have to shoot them, but I still like to hunt. But I really don't want to hurt them. I want to kill them dead. That's why they don't know what hit them." "That's what I hoped you'd say, son. I would hate to think you wanted to hunt just for the fun of killing. In fact, if this were the case, you would not be hunting. Now, you remember, don't let these little rodents suffer if you don't have to. If you wound one, shoot him again, at once. Don't let them crawl away to suffer and die, no matter what you are hunting. Always do the same, and you will be a great hunter someday. You have an uncanny ability for accuracy with that rifle, and that is all important for the very reason I have just been talking about." On our way home that evening, Dad said, "I have a surprise for you. You will be 6 years old in a very short time now, and I have talked to your mother. Tomorrow you can start hunting by yourself. You have passed the test. When we get home, I'm going to make you a business deal." He stayed at heel and showed even more interest when I picked up the dead gophers to get their tails. Chapter 6. While Mother was clearing away the supper dishes, Dad called me over beside him and made me feel mighty important as he outlined the deal he had mentioned. "Now, son, according to Wayne, you have earned the right to hunt by yourself. You know all the safety rules, and don't ever neglect them, no matter if you are hunting alone or with someone else. You have learned to be a fair shot, so you know what your gun will do. Don't underestimate how far it will shoot or how much damage it can do when it hits something. If you were to shoot yourself with that little .22, it could kill you just as dead as a big rifle if you hit in the right place. But I'm not going to lecture you anymore. I guess you are ready and anxious to hear what my proposition is, huh?" "Gee, I sure am," I replied. "All right, here it is. First, if you are going to hunt steady, you are going to need a lot of shells. In order to buy them, you are going to need some way of earning money. So here's what I propose to do. I'll pay you 2 cents for each gopher tail, so you will have to save the tails off the ones you shoot to collect. The shells will cost a little under 1 cent each, or about 40 cents for a box of 50. That means you cannot waste too many, or you will soon go out of business. I don't figure on buying you any more shells after I get you started, so you'll have to depend on your shooting if you intend to keep on hunting." To begin with, I'm going to give you 500 rounds, and that will be all. If you shoot any birds for the table or other game, the shells for that, of course, will be allowed. I know that some gophers you kill will fall down their holes, and you won't be able to get their tails. I will allow you 5 of these losses for every box of shells. So much for that. Now, if you do a good job of cleaning out these gophers and don't make any mistakes or have any accidents, I'll buy you a brand new rifle this fall. But remember, if you get this, you are going to have to earn it. The only way you have to do this is to shoot carefully and learn to shoot more accurately than ever and not waste your ammunition on shots that you are not sure of, as I have noticed you doing. That is all. You can have a good night's sleep tonight, and tomorrow you can get started. Here is a new jackknife you'll need to cut off tails. Any time I am home, you can show them to me and collect your money for shells. I rushed to the kitchen to tell Mother the news, and she seemed pleased for me, although I could tell there was a slight feeling of worry as she said, "Oh, I do hope you will be very careful. Seems to me that you are a little young for this, but your father and Wayne both say it is all right. Anyway, you just be extra careful for me." I assured her that I would. When I finally got to bed that night, I could not go to sleep for a long time just thinking about how much fun I was going to have, how much money I could make. I was going to fool Dad. I could get around 50 gophers a day, I was sure, and that would earn me a whole dollar. With careful shooting, that would give me a profit of 50 cents a day. Not only that, but the bonus of a brand new rifle come fall. Boy, I would bet there'd be a few town or city kids could do what I was about to do. I finally dropped off to sleep, thinking about showing the kids who came to visit how I could hunt. That morning, right after breakfast, I proudly got my rifle, put 2 boxes of shells in my pockets, and started out. Bobby, my collie dog, started to follow me, but I sent him back for fear he would scare the gophers. He looked so forlorn standing there watching me, I almost relented and let him come. But then I thought I was working now and I couldn't be bothered with my pet and companion. With the first box of shells that morning, I got 22 tails and 2 gophers had fallen down their holes. 24 out of 50 shots. That was not good enough, and I was a little disappointed. I would have to be a little more careful if I hoped to stay in business. I wish now that I had not shot 5 times at one gopher that I knew was too far away in the first place. When I had shot the legs off one and he danced around, causing me to have to shoot 4 more times at him, and yet he finally got down his hole, crippled, I didn't like that, and I knew Dad wouldn't either. That was 9 shots wasted right there. I would have to be more careful. In the afternoon I hunted with more caution, but as careful as I shot 1 full box of shells and collected only 32 tails. 5 of the elusive little animals had managed to get down their holes, even though I was sure I had hit them dead center. I was really quite proud of my shooting, but to get 40 tails out of a box of shells was going to require some mighty accurate work. Indeed, far more than I had thought at first. I just couldn't afford many misses if I were to stay in business, and stay I must. The next morning Bobby wagged his stubbed tail in anticipation when I was ready to leave. It had been a lonely without him the day before, so I finally gave in and decided to let him come along. If he did not mind me, I would send him straight back home. He was a smart dog, and he was always eager to follow me wherever I went. He obeyed very well, so perhaps he might not be such a liability after all. Therefore, with a light heart, we started out on the hunt together. The first few gophers I shot seemed to interest him, but at command from me, he stayed at heel and showed even more interest when I picked up the dead gophers to get their tails. I had shot about 6 and missed one when suddenly I saw one eating a short distance from his hole, but a little far away for accurate shooting. In spite of all my good intentions, I decided to try for him. Carefully, I aimed and squeezed off the shot. With a thrill, I saw him leap into the air, come down, circle a few times slowly, and then start for his hole, mortally wounded but still going. I knew I could not hope to hit him again while he was still going. With a sinking heart, I remembered what Dad had said about letting the wounded ones get away. Then I heard a whine, and I shouted, "Go get him, Bobby! Sick him!" He was off like a streak, and he managed to catch the wounded gopher right at the edge of his hole. Grabbing the little rodent in his teeth, Bobby gave him one hard shake and then dropped him, stone dead, at his feet. He looked at me and sat down, waiting for me to come and claim the prize. He seemed to be laughing at me when I came up, as if to say, "There, I guess you'd need me after all." I was elated. Now I knew that there was a part of the answer for getting more of those tails I had been losing. We would hunt as a team from now on. My dog was smarter than I had thought.